The matter is an ordinary one, he continued, but there are some points of interest in it. Now he started explaining about his findings that the matter is very simple, very ordinary. There is nothing special about it, but there are some points in it which seems to me very interesting. I seated myself in his armchair and warmed my hands before his crackling fire. Although it looks very ordinary, a deadly story or crime must be linked to it, I guessed. So, when the writer heard this, he seated himself in an armchair and he warmed his hands before the fire, and then he started speaking that although it looks very simple, very ordinary, but I'm sure there must be some deadly story or crime linked to it. No, no crime, laughed Sherlock Holmes. Let me tell you how the hat came here. So now at this, Sherlock Holmes laughed and he said, no, no, there is nothing serious, no crime linked to it. Now I'll tell you the story that how this hat came to me. It was 4 o'clock on Christmas morning, and Peterson, the commissioner, was walking home. A tallish man carrying a fat goose was walking ahead of him on the road. As he reached the end of the street, a little knot of rough men attacked the man with the goose. Now he started speaking, he started telling the story that it was 4 o'clock on the Christmas morning when his door attendant named Peterson was going back to his home, and when he was on his way, a tall man carrying a goose was walking ahead of him on the road, and suddenly a group of men came there and they attacked on the man with the goose. One of the hoodlums knocked off the tall man's hat as he aimed a blow at him. The tall man raised his stick to defend himself and, swinging it over his head, smashed the shop window behind him. Now, what happened when all of the tall men was walking behind him? Peterson was walking, and suddenly a group of men came there and they attacked on the man with the goose. So, what happened? One of them knocked off a hoodlums to aim to target at the hat to target on the hat of the men with the goose, and to defend himself that man raised his stick and he started moving his stick over his head, and in this attempt he smashed the window of a shop behind him. Now Peterson was walking behind them. He saw all of this. Peterson rushed forward to protect the victim, but the men, frightened by Peterson's uniform, took to his heels. The roughs also ran away as Peterson approached. So Peterson was left with the fat goose and the battered hat that the tall man left behind. So what happened when Peterson tried to help that man? What happened? Because he was wearing the uniform of a door attendant, so the man got frightened and he ran away from there. And also, the men who were trying to attack that man, they also left behind. So what was remaining there? Now no one was there, only Peterson was standing there with a hat and the goose. The hat of the man who was carrying the goose and the goose. Peterson wanted to give the goose back to the owner but faced quite a problem. Now, Peterson actually wanted to return the things to the owner, but there was a problem. And what was that problem? Mrs. Henry Baker was printed on a small card that was tied to the goose's left leg. Also, the hat does have the initials HB. HB means Henry Baker's that have been inscribed on its lining. However, there are thousands of bakers in the city and many hundreds of those are Henry Bakers. Peterson wanted to return the things to the owner, but what was the problem? The name, Mrs. Henry Baker. It was written on a card that was tied to the left leg of the goose, and the initials were also inscribed on the hat. What were the initials? HB. But they know the name of the person, they knew the name of the person, but the problem is there that there are thousands of baker in the town and many of them were having the same name, Henry Baker. So how to find out that to whom this hat and goose belong? Peterson brought both hat and goose round to me on Christmas morning, as he knows such problems interest me. And when he was not able to find the owner of the hat and the goose, he brought both the things to Sherlock Holmes because he was aware that he has interest in such things, in solving such problems. The goose we kept until this morning when it seemed to be going bad. Peterson will have it cooked today. I thought that I would keep the hat with. He added further that we kept the goose until this morning, but when it seemed that it is going bad, Peterson must have cooked it today, but I kept the hat with me. Did you advertise in the papers so that the owner can claim the hat? Now, the writer asked a question that did you advertise about this hat and the goose in the newspaper so that the owner can come here to claim? No, said Sherlock Holmes. Then how will you know who the owner is? Now, the next question from the writer is that if you did not publish it, if you did not advertise it in the newspaper, then how would you come to know that who the owner is? We know what we can deduce from this hat. He said that we will try to find out who the owner is with the help of this hat only. But you are joking. I don't see what you can deduce from this battered hat. When the writer heard this reply from the Sherlock Holmes, he said that you must be joking because by looking at the condition of the hat, it was very difficult to find any clue, any hint about the owner of the hat. The hat was in a very bad, in a very poor condition. So he said that I don't find that what you can deduce, what you can take out from this battered hat. Here is my lens. You know my method. What can you gather about the man who owns this hat? So Sherlock Holmes said, here is my lens. He gave his lens to the writer and he said that you know my methods, you know how I work for the things. What can we gather about the man who owns this hat? And he asked him to have a look at the hat with the help of lens so that he can also see those things which Sherlock Holmes found out. I took the tattered object in my hands and turned it over ruefully, means filled with regret or sorrow for the hat because it was in such a poor condition. So the writer took the hat tattered object means the hat in his hand, and he turned it over so that he can have a close look. It was a very ordinary black hat of the usual round shape, hard and much the worse for wear. Now, this is the description of the hat by the writer, that it was a very ordinary black hat. It was hard and it was in a very bad condition to wear by anyone.